Welcome back, guys, to the Football Biz podcast. As always, I am Grayson Mortimer, and today joining me is a very well-known figure of the MLS community. Hailing all the way from Los Angeles, California, Eli started his Instagram account almost 10 years ago and has since amassed almost 60,000 followers. Known for being a passionate LA Galaxy fan, as one of the best minds around the league, I am pleased to welcome Mr. Eli Lesser, or This Week in MLS. Eli, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, that was a sick intro. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And we are so close to 60K on Instagram. I'm going to do one last push to get there, but it will be a big moment, I think, not just for me, but for everyone who's been a part of it, the past 8 to 10 years.
Absolutely, and I hope that it's kind of a two-way thing. Maybe some of my people will go follow you, and I'm not as big of a platform as you are, but maybe it'll be vice versa as well. So
100%.
it'll help both of us that way. Yeah. So just a couple intro questions to get us started here. What kind of first got you into football and MLS in particular?
Yeah. So actually, believe it or not, MLS is my first exposure to the sport. And it really came when David Beckham came to the Galaxy. That's when I first heard about the Galaxy. That's when I first heard about the league. I had a grandpa who was a big European soccer fan. He was very excited when, David Beckham was announced. So, that's kind of what it all started. And then I really got into MLS a couple years later, around the time Robbie Keane joined the Galaxy. That's when I went from someone who had been to a game to someone who, lived and breathed this club and the league. It really sprouted from there, my love for the league. And then I started my page in 2015.
Yeah, fair enough, man. And yeah, I know Robbie Keane very well. His goal in extra time sunk us in 2014.
I was there.
Yeah, I was at home almost crying watching it on TV. So I completely, yeah, I'm very familiar with him. Yeah, tough being a Revs fan, man. It's we're the Minnesota Vikings of MLS, and it's been a tough go, but hopefully Bruce Arena helps us turn that around. But yeah, we'll see. But no, that's really cool, man. I completely understand a lot. I think a lot of people started following the league when Beckham joined, and I think that was really one of the kickstarters. We'll definitely talk a little bit about him today. Um, yeah, so you said you started your account in 2015, and you've since made thousands of videos. And I looked yesterday, and it was around 6,600 posts. So you've been quite active. But what was your kind of biggest inspiration for starting the page, and then just kind of just continuing to go that route?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've gone different routes throughout the years, which is interesting about, my time here. But what started my page really, I used to post like the Instagram account, All Sports News.
Okay.
Before I made videos. That the videos actually didn't start till the pandemic. So, from 2015 to 2020, I was just making graphic posts, and a lot of them it started in the style of the All Sports News with, the big white borders with the text on them,
Of
every
course.
post. And then, I tried to be an insider, and, there was a lot of great that came from it, and there was a lot of bad that came from it. And I realized that wasn't very much for me. And, when I started going to school for broadcasting, and I came home at the start of the pandemic, and I was like, wait, I'm not doing anything on This Week in MLS that's making me a better broadcaster. I need to be on camera all the time. So that's when I decided to start, making videos. And that's kind of where we're at today.
Yeah, fair enough. Would you say that one of your biggest inspirations for trying to make the page as good as it was your experience at Syracuse?
Yeah, definitely that. And then there's just, when I was thinking about, my 5-10 year plan, whatever it is, I'm someone who always is thinking like 10 steps ahead. And when I was thinking of who I want to be for MLS, or whose career path do I want to model, I have a couple different people who I really look up to for different ways, and people whose career paths I'd like to take. One of those is Rachel Bonetta, who was at MLS many years ago. She's since, gone on to do other things outside of soccer, and is now hosting shows on Fox and stuff. But, I saw her start out as like a social media host, then was a kind of a funny person at MLS. That's someone that I would like to be. And, actually I do fan reaction videos every week, and those were inspired by one video she did back in 2015, where she was acting as every MLS fan getting ready for the playoffs. It's somewhere on the MLS YouTube. But that was my inspiration to start that series, and Scooter Magruder, who, it does that type of reaction video. But she was like the big one. And then in terms of an influencer type of thing, Jesser, the YouTuber, he is a basketball YouTuber, and he's like an NBA access guy. He gets to go to all these things and stuff. And that's kind of who I want to be for the MLS. The
Down the
the
line, kind
sphere
of
of
that sort of
MLS.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure, yeah. I'm not too familiar with Jesser, but I am very much familiar with Canadian treasure Rachel Bonetta. She actually, I think, before MLS, back in the days of when Kick TV was pretty big, with her, Jimmy Conrad, and the likes of, even Spencer Owen and the True Geordie would make videos
Yes.
for them. There was a back when Kick TV wasn't associated at all with Copa 90. I do remember her from that, and then she did go to MLS. Haven't really followed her that much, but no, she was awesome. Anytime like she made a video, I completely see where you're coming from. Yeah, no, and yeah, she is Canadian, so that makes me quite happy as a Canada fan. But yeah, no, she was great. I definitely see it's a good motivator for you. She's a good role model.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna be like an Andrew Wiebe type, but he came from more of like the writing background, which isn't
Yeah.
really for me. And when I think of like personality wise, I think I fit more of like a Rachel than an Andrew Wiebe. And then another inspiration that just came up into my mind when you were talking about True Doherty and stuff. I mean, obviously, I grew up watching The Sidemen,
Okay.
and that's like I was a huge FIFA YouTube watcher back in the day, and all those guys are inspirations to me in some sort of way. I mean, I don't think anything they do is something I could do for MLS. That's why I mentioned Jesser, but I'll send you who Jesser is at the
Sure.
end of this. But it'll all make sense when you see it.
Yeah, absolutely, man, for sure. Yeah, no, definitely. I'll have to give Jester a look, but yeah, no, those are all great. And yeah, Weeby actually I think was at the Red Bulls game this past weekend, so I wonder what he thought of the terrible call that happened at the
Oh,
end of that.
geez.
But we'll mention that too. But yeah, no, that all makes complete sense, and hopefully that can happen for you. But yeah, taking a bit of a change here. We're going to talk a little bit about how MLS currently is. I would say, in my opinion, that it's probably the biggest it's ever been. I don't think that's too much of a big take there, but we mentioned Beckham, but other than that, what would you believe has directly contributed to the league growing as a whole?
I'm a big proponent of just, every but one by one, every person that goes to an MLS match falls in love with it. Because for me, anyone who's ever criticized MLS has never been to an MLS match, or who doesn't enjoy watching MLS, they haven't been to an MLS match. And I think, for me, in my experience, I would have never have become a huge MLS fan had I not actually gone to a match, because I think there's nothing like a soccer match out there in terms of, atmosphere and experience. So I was a proponent of that. And then, it helps when, sure, there's the stigma of retirement league, which I know we're going to talk about, but it
Yeah,
very much helps when players like that come into the league. Players with big platforms come and play in the league. They fill in seats. I mean, talking about the LA Galaxy, obviously we've had big names in the past. That's always helped bring in. Oh, I just caught a flout. But there's always you know, players that bring in people that want to buy jerseys and
sure.
come watch them play. And, also huge Mexican fan base with having a guy like Chicharito or Carlos Vela in your city. It draws people to want to come and watch. And I think that's the big thing. Obviously, we're trying to increase our TV viewership numbers, but, in terms of actual attendance numbers, MLS is just as good as anyone else around the world.
Yeah, for sure, and I would definitely agree with that. And for Mexican players in the Galaxy, definitely soon potentially Rodolfo Pizarro as well. But yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And I would say another big thing too is is the fact that there's also been an increase of guys that aren't quite necessarily the big names, but still attract a lot of attention. Look at my club. Carlos Heel is a prime example of that. A guy that wasn't super known. He had a season with Aston Villa and a couple seasons with Deportivo La Coruña in Spain. But overall, I mean, he came into MLS, and now basically everybody that follows the league knows who he is and knows he's absolutely insane. Hani Mukhtar, I would say, is another great example. And I think those guys are as important to the league, in my opinion, as the big names are, because you get those star quality, guys, but that build a name for themselves in MLS. Um, so yeah, I think that's definitely been part of it too. And yeah,
Those are my
no.
favorite players, by the way. The players that
Oh, me
aren't
too.
necessarily household names coming in, but become household names in MLS. There's nothing better than that. Think of Joseph Martinez. He's a megastar in
Yep.
MLS, and he wasn't much of anyone before coming to Atlanta. So, players like that. And I love when we could get younger players in their prime that are very high quality, that do have some hype around them to come to the league, like a Ricky Puig or Sebastian Giovinco back in the day, players like
Yeah.
that. Anytime MLS can attract a player like that at that age, that's the ideal. And, I'm hoping, even though I got to be careful what I wish for, but I'm hoping for a player like Chucky Lozano to come to MLS now. But something like that. Those are the real game-changing signings for MLS.
Yeah, Puig is a great example, especially because I mean, where would the Galaxy be without him this season?
We
I mean,
wouldn't. We
you guys
wouldn't
aren't
be.
great. You guys aren't great right now to begin with, but he has kept that team together. And yeah, no, he's a great example. I kind of knew him from FIFA, and then when he came over, I was like, this guy's not very old. But yeah, he's a talent, man. He's a great talent and easily the Galaxy's best player this season.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, definitely. I definitely think the league needs to continue to see more of those guys, but those guys are helping the league as much as the big names. But yeah, no, you mentioned, I think expansion clubs would definitely be part of it too. Because I mean, look at Charlotte FC. Even though they suck, they have one of the best attendances in the league this season.
That's what I mean. People are excited to go see soccer in America, and the pro rel people can't understand that. But
Absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure. And I see the arguments for that, but I just don't think in American sports, I just don't see it working or get really coming into fruition. That's just not how it really works over here. And I think that's one thing Europeans have to figure out about our league is that it's never going to happen. The
yeah,
pro
and
relegation.
I'm not anti pro rel for MLS. I'm just anti people who devote their whole lives to promotion relegation for US soccer, but refuse to give MLS any credit for anything when MLS is the reason why soccer is relevant in this country. But
Yeah, for sure.
anywho,
Yeah,
anywho.
exactly. So I guess changing gears a little bit. So we talked about younger players. So how would you say, how do you feel about the league being more of a selling league in this regard? Because it has been that as well. Obviously you have some older stars coming over, but there's also some guys that are going to Europe and really making a name for themselves. My club's a great example of that. Tejan Buchanan, Matt Turner, and in the future, definitely most likely George Petrovic and Dylan Barrero are definitely guys to keep an eye on. Um, how do you feel about the league being a selling league?
First of all, for your Revs fans, I'm really sorry about Dylan Barrero getting injured. He is like one
I
of my
was at
favorite
that game.
players to watch.
I was
Bro,
at that game. It was awful.
he is one of my favorite players to watch. I was so upset when I saw that injury happen. But anyways, back on topic. For me, it's really a balancing act because if you think about it, the more older stars that you bring in that sell the jerseys, plus the more stars you create from youngsters, that just doubles the amount of stars you have in the league, and they're on totally different career trajectories. And that's a beautiful thing. You get those big names coming in and even teaching those young guys how to do things and how to, become stars. It's crazy how the best left back in the world came from MLS. You know what I mean? It's just all
Yeah.
this amazing stuff. I love having or being a seller league because we're seeing all these players, develop under MLS academies and becoming some of the best players in the world at their positions. And, we're only going to see more and more of that. I refuse to believe this current USMNT is our golden generation because soccer in this country is still just growing tremendously. And I think, the USMNT is going to keep growing. And with that, MLS academies are going to keep growing. Everything's going to just keep growing to the point where, US will be a powerhouse and the rest of the world is going to hate us, which is what we want. That is what we want here in America and in Canada. I'm not going to leave out Canada too, because obviously, some of the best exports have come from Canada. But
Yes, they have.
yes, and I love Canada and I love the Canadian national team. It's so hard for me watching a USA Canada match, because I actually like the players on Canada more than the players on the US, but I have to root for the US.
Yeah,
But it just for me, I don't think MLS needs to be considered a farmers league or a retirement league. It just needs to be itself, and it could do it all. It doesn't have to choose one thing to be. It doesn't need to be France. It doesn't need to be Germany. It
for
can
sure.
be the destination league. It could be the seller league. It could be the farmer league. It could be whatever it wants, because we're America. We have the resources to handle anything. So, I do like that we're selling all these young players at a very young age, and they're growing up to be these incredible stars in Europe. And that's a great thing. But, it's not all we should be known for here in MLS. And I don't think we need to primarily focus on that only.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, you mentioned the Canadian national team. I mean, yeah, I saw your post the other day where you had the post with Jacob Schaffelberg and Kamal Miller.
My two favorite
Um,
players, two
yeah,
favorite guys.
both of those guys are super chill. I have a Canadian flag here at home, and both of them have just happened to sign it. So I completely see where you're coming from there. But yeah, I mean, a lot of our best exports have been MLS players. I mean, Alfonso Davies, you mentioned him. He is now the best left back in the world. Being linked with Real Madrid, and I really hope he goes there. But Tejan Buchanan is another one from
Kyle
the
Larin, even.
Revs. Kyle
Yeah.
Larin now, yeah. A lot of our, and even the likes of Steven Vittoria took a stop here when he was with Philadelphia a few years ago. So yeah, and that helped further his career. So definitely a crucial aspect to see it. And then of course the U.S. You got loads of guys going over to Europe now. And Brendan Aronson being a recent one, Paxton Aronson also, among tons of other guys. So yeah, I definitely think it's an important aspect, but as you said, shouldn't be everything. So definitely agreement there.
Mhm.
Yeah. But and kind of relating to this, I think while MLS is a great league, there was the likes of Reggie Cannon the other day saying that Jesus Ferreira had to go over there, and your opinion was kind of like, actually, most of the time I'll defend MLS in this instance, but Ferreira, because of how competitive the striker position is in the
Mhm.
USMNT now, with the likes, especially with the likes of Balogun coming in, which I thought was one of the best moves the US has ever done.
Oh yeah.
Um,
It's crazy how
yeah,
we recruit players. Well, like other countries, they get what they get what they get, They don't
yeah,
have a choice of who they could select or who they could, get to commit to them. But yeah.
yeah. Canada's definitely had their fair share of those guys too. We've had a ton of dual nationals declare for us. Jonathan David was a big
Yeah.
one, and that was a big loss for the U.S. is because he could have been their striker, but he turned them down actually in the youth levels. Um, one of my very proud moments there as a Canadian. He chose us over the U.S. But and Eustachio is another one for he could have played for Portugal, but
By the way, I
um,
wanted to ask you,
sure.
is there a sort of Portuguese Canadian connection? Because there's two players that are Portuguese on your team. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, so I think Toronto is one of the most diverse cities in the world. Both of those
Mhm.
guys, I grew up in Ontario, I believe. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's Portuguese exports and a lot of expats in a lot of places. Even in my area in Massachusetts, there's a decent Portuguese population. But yeah, Ontario has a big Portuguese population as well.
Okay. Because I was
So that
confused
would
as
be
to
it because
how
yeah,
they, got there. But
yeah,
yeah, that's cool.
Eustachio and Vittoria both are Portuguese guys, and both looked at Portugal before declaring for us, but they both were born in Canada, so I'm glad that they chose their allegiance there. I don't think Vittoria would have gotten into Portugal's team, but Eustachio nowadays
Yeah.
he would have been on the cusp. But yeah, there's a Portuguese contingent in Ontario, from the best of my knowledge. But yeah, but going back to Reggie Cannon and Jesus Ferreira, how'd you make of that whole thing? Especially being the fact that Ferreira is in competition for that striker role.
I mean, the good thing about the USMNT in a way is the fact that, you could be a top striker in MLS and it might not be good enough for the national team anymore. And that's where I'm coming from with that, because Ricardo Pepi, he was scoring a ton of goals in the Netherlands last year. Now he's making a move to PSV. Balogun's going to make a move somewhere. He's not going to stay at Arsenal most likely. And, I'm sure wherever he goes, he's going to score in a bunch of goals. So it's very hard to be like, if you're scoring 20 goals in MLS, but then you have a guy who's scoring 20 goals for PSV and a guy who's scoring 20 goals for, Reims. It's very hard to, give that spot to Jesus Ferreira, no matter how good he is, no matter what the system is at play. I also think Jesus Ferreira does have great potential to, as Reggie Cannon talked about, some of the skills that he has to, if he were to make that jump, it could take him to the next level. Because, maybe he is feeling a bit comfortable in MLS, obviously is a very fat paycheck being a designated player. And I think that's what's preventing him from making a move, because he's very happy. And that's also great. At the end of the day, MLS wants to be a league where their best players can stay too. And it's his choice, and I respect it either way. But I think if he wants to be the striker for the U.S. men's national team, and that's his career goal, then I think, he should probably make the leap. But if he wants to be one of the greatest MLS players of all time, I will be just as happy. And, I would love for him to stay and play for Dallas forever. It's really just, what is his goal for his career? Does he want to continue to make the bank and make a name for himself in Dallas? Or does he want to, test himself, maybe take a little risk and, maybe reap rewards, but maybe, he believes already, which would be kind of sucky to think, that, his ceiling won't ever reach the ceiling of those guys. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in his mind, but, I don't disagree with Cannon. I think, he should consider making the move, and, he could always come back. It's not like, he could leave Dallas and then never come back. They'll always come back.
Yeah, there's loads of players that have made the jump and ended up coming back. I mean, Clint Dempsey was a big one. Michael Bradley did that as well. Josie Altidore, Tim Howard, all of those guys have gone to Europe and then come back. And I think in each instance, it helped their career. Maybe minus Altidore, but I do think that, for the most part, Europe has definitely helped the progression of the USMNT. But yeah, no, Ferreira, if he definitely wants to compete for the USMNT starting job, he's got to make the jump, in my opinion, because there's so much competition in that spot now.
And the hype around Balogun, it's just the hype level on Balogun right now is just so high.
If you score 20 goals for a mid-tier French team, you're gonna have hype. He's Arsenal's property still, but even there, I mean, he's gonna have trouble beating out Jesus. But I do think that Balogun is a legit world beater. I mean, he's got loads of potential just watching him.
100%.
But yeah, for sure. Switching gears a little bit in our last kind of question before we discuss our main topic today. Your club, the LA Galaxy, have signed some big names in the league as well, but David Beckham, Robbie Keane, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, to name a few. Even though these guys have all been on the older end, Beckham, I think, was almost 30, so he was about mid-career, but Robbie Keane and Zlatan came over when they were older. How do you say that they have improved the state of the league other than attendance numbers? Because we already did discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about attendance numbers, but they definitely increase viewership numbers. I could speak as someone who makes content about all these players. I know what posts do better numbers. I know if I talk about this player, it's going to do better than this player, even if that's not what I want to do. As a content creator, I kind of have to make that choice, to post the thing I know will do better. And, those players bring attention to the league, whether it's positive or negative. Sometimes all press is good press. And, I think that was specific with Zlatan, because he crapped on the league while playing in it, but that also helped grow the league in a way. It's crazy. The whole Zlatan thing was just wild. It feels like a fever dream already, and we're only like 3 years removed. But that was, those are the players that, bring eyeballs from across the world to the league, especially a guy like Zlatan, that with the personality of Zlatan. That's the thing. These players don't just bring their following, they bring their personalities, which make the league more interesting as well. And I think of a Ricky Puig right now. That guy has a very big personality on and off the field that, is bringing him a lot of love from the Galaxy fans and a lot of hate from everyone else. So, that's the type of thing that you need in MLS. And you need in just any sports league in general. You need a player that everyone loves to love and a player that everyone loves to hate. So, and I think players like a Robbie Keane, as you mentioned, he was my idol, but to you, he's probably the worst thing that ever happened. So that's what I mean. That's a good thing. Whether it's a good thing for me or, because he helped me or not, it's just a good thing for the league in general to have these players and to have the fans have these strong feelings based on, what they did to your team or not. These are things that cultivate a fandom and keep growing it and making it stronger. I think for me, I think, this whole Klein out situation, I know it's over, but the whole protest and everything, it made my passion and love for the Galaxy even stronger than it was before. At times of heartbreak, you really just dig deep and you love what you love even more. And I'm sure as a Revs fan, I don't know. I'm a Clipper fan for basketball. So I've experienced heartbreak after heartbreak, and just every time it
Yeah.
makes it stronger and stronger for me, like the love, because I know that second we finally get that trophy, it's going to feel just so much better than, winning 16 trophies or 17 like the Lakers. Like it's, that feeling and that, that want and that desire to win. And, a lot of people think MLS doesn't have that, which is just the stupidest thing ever. Who plays the sport and doesn't want to win?
Yeah.
So I get it, but I don't. But that's what's like cultivating the fandom, and that's why those big names like Robbie Keane and Zlatan are so great to have into the league. Everyone's gonna remember the time they went and saw Zlatan against the Galaxy, or when the Galaxy came to town, and that's what we're gonna get with a certain name that we're probably about to talk about.
Yeah, sadly, I never actually did get to see Zlatan because he didn't go to. Well, I wasn't at the game anyway, but he didn't go to Gillette when he was on the Galaxy just because of the turf.
Banter Fields.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I mean, Barrero's injury is a great example of the turf fields. I mean, that's one thing that I definitely think the league needs to change. Um, yeah, I'm all in favor of that, especially with the amount of injuries that happened. But yeah, I mean, he was a big one, and yes, his personality was negative towards the league, but it was a positive for the league, and at the same time. So, yeah, definitely agree with you there. And yeah, I mean, we talk about heartbreaks. I mean, I still think Carlos Ruiz haunts my dreams more than even Zlatan does, because I was only 2 years old at the time. But just knowing that was the closest we got, I think that one, and Houston, of course, when Twelman put us up, and then Brian Ching scored a minute later, like those types of things. I mean, I just exemplify how we've
That
been
Revs
just,
team deserved something.
dude. We made 4 MLS Cups in a span of like 10 years. Like Tallman was on that team, Steve Ralston was on that team. Uh, the likes of Pat Noonan were in there, Matt Reese, of course, in goal. I mean, there were some good players on that team, and then we just couldn't get over the hurdle. And then, of course, Steve Nichols as coach, who's one of my favorites on ESPN. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, I definitely think that every big player that comes into the league has mostly been good. There's been a few hiccups, of course, but yeah, there is that. And I think the last thing before we move on to the really big one is what do you feel that the current state of the designated player rule kind of stands? Because that's one thing that Beckham brought with him, was he kind of created that rule because of how big his wages were. What would you say that the DP rule has done for the league, but also do you think that it needs to change?
Yes, I also talked about this in a video recently, but how I've always seen the DP rule is it was put in place to help lure in big talent at the start of it, because, hey, we could pay your salaries now, like a David Beckham. And, over time, the league just kind of grew past, the need to push to bring in these big stars, because they can do it. They don't need to basically beg the big stars to come for a DP spot. However, I do get what it's done for the balance of the league, and I like that MLS is a league of parity. I do think, it is time to, loosen up the roster rules a little bit. I don't think they should make drastic changes. I don't think the league can handle drastic changes at this point. But, I've heard talks about them adding a 4th DP spot next year, which, is something I'm for. I would like, for me, ideally next year, it would be 4 DP spots. None of them are young designated player spots, just DP spots. And then you have like another U22 initiative spot. And there's a weird thing where like you could only have like this amount of U22s if you have this many DPs and stuff. Just eliminate that. Just make it, 4 DPs, 3 to 4 U22 initiative spots, and, see how that goes for a year or two. And if we're seeing the quality of play just rise dramatically, hopefully you could, increase the salary cap, which they should also do, of course, which is going to happen naturally. But I'm not one of the people that thinks they need to abolish all the rules and just start from scratch, because the league will not be able to handle that. Some teams will die out for sure. I'm not anti-Garber Bucks. I just think, the league, especially with Messi coming in, we could provide more of those to teams and I don't know why I'm saying we as if I have a say in any of this. But
I don't either.
yeah. But MLS as a league, I think they could handle it a bit better.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely would be in favor of a fourth DP spot as well, especially with the loanee addition that the Revolution just got, Tomas Chancale, who is a very talented Argentine winger from River Plate, the same club that Gustavo Bo is from. So he would, one of the clauses that we have is we loaned him, but if we bought him, he would automatically become a DP, which in our current state would not help us, because it either means that Bo leaves or Brioni would have to get bought down or something like that. So fourth DP spot makes absolute sense. I think they should definitely add that. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the U22 as well, because that's how we got Barrero. So I'm a huge fan of both of those things. So yeah, that all makes sense. I don't know too much about the ins and outs of like this many DPs, well, I know there's 3 DP spots, but like this many DP to U22 ratio. I don't know much about that, to be
I have it in my notes app somewhere.
But it's I don't know the ins and outs of those things, but yeah, I mean the four DPs, I think increasing it to that just makes sense to me. I think you only promote the league being better, and yeah, as you said, clubs dying out. Yeah, I mean we'd be one of the ones that I think would struggle. We're a decent market, but the likes of both teams in LA, New York would just crush us.
At least you guys are competent. Or your ownership seems like they care. You might have, other opinions, but when I say teams will die out, I'm more worried about the Colorado Rapids and Chicago Fire.
Yeah, that's true. Those I mean, Chicago got Shaqiri, so at least they still are able to market themselves somewhat. But yeah, I see what you mean. Colorado hasn't had a stud in years.
Since Tim Howard was
Jermaine Jones, I think, were the last two. That I can think of, and we had Jermaine Jones before they did. I think that for us, actually, that was probably our biggest intent signing was him. I think that's where things started to actually change for us, because the Crafts they've cared, but they haven't cared enough, and I think that really changed. They started to actually spend on our team when Bruce Arena came in. I mean, that's what he does.
I love hey, from a Galaxy fan to a Revs fan, I love Bruce. Bruce is the GOAT. Yeah. I love him. The Galaxy have not been the same since he left for the USMNT. So,
Fair enough. Yeah, I love Bruce too. Bruce has completely changed our team. I mean, we haven't done as well in the playoffs as we would have hoped, but what he's done for the team is undeniably awesome. But yeah, changing gears here, moving into our big topic today. We're going to talk about Messi. I mean, we have to.
No, kidding.
He's arguably the best player that's ever played the game. Some people can say Ronaldo, some people can say Pele, Maradona. There's arguments all day, but Messi has won 7 Ballon d'Ors. He's won the World Cup. He's Barcelona's all-time goal scorer. He's done just about everything that he possibly can. What do you see him doing for the league as a whole in the probably 2 years, 3 years he'll be here?
It's hard to say what exactly he'll do, but when I think about how Beckham transformed the league, I'd like to think that Messi, in this current day and age with the social media age and stuff, will transcend MLS to just a whole new level, like Beckham did, but just even bigger, given just the types of platforms people have now, and the platform soccer has now. It was a phase 1 with David Beckham, and this is the new era now. And although it's weird how Messi's, and Miami's all of a sudden able to bring in all of Messi's friends, it's a huge thing for MLS to be able to have those players in the league, and to have Messi in this league is just, there's no words to describe how amazing it feels as an MLS fan and as someone who's been covering this league for 8 years, is to have Messi here, when I started this account, it was still Messi, Neymar, Suarez. So it's
MSN, yeah.
it's crazy to think about, just where where he's at now, and it's just such perfect timing for the league. Messi's coming off a World Cup. He's coming to MLS. MLS has started this new era of Apple, and all these amazing tournaments are coming to America over the next few
Leagues Cup.
years. I mean, yeah, this is the time to get into soccer in America. And I do call it soccer. I know you called it football earlier. I'm like
I say both. I mean, I try to appeal to everybody, but yeah, I mean, I say both. It is what it is.
since I'm a supporter and content creator of Major League Soccer, I call it soccer.
Naturally, yes.
Yeah, that's what's better. It makes more sense. And also I don't care about FCs in
Me
MLS,
neither.
but yeah, exactly.
That's one thing
OG.
the Revs. That's one thing the Revs did when they did their rebrand. Their whole thing was no FCs given, and I
Yeah,
thought that was perfect. A lot of people don't like that, but I was like, that's perfect. Like, I love that we're still the New England Revolution or like LA
100%.
Galaxy. So complete.
MLS, I have
Continue.
all the love for the MLS OGs. I will always root for them in MLS Cups. But anyways, back on topic. It's just crazy the amount of attention. Like we talked about the attention Zlatan brought, but this attention that Messi's bringing is going to reach a whole new level. I mean, Inter Miami have more followers on Instagram than any American sports team that's not in the NBA.
I didn't know that. I knew that their following jumped up, but I didn't realize it wasn't. I didn't realize it was that big.
It's beyond all
Jeez.
NFL teams.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
I think only 3 NBA teams have more followers than Inter Miami. And it's like the Lakers, which is like whatever. And then like the
Yeah.
Warriors, because Steph, like it's like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, no, that. I think that already kind of exemplifies it. I mean, my friend is a Charlotte FC fan. One of my co-hosts who does this with me,
Mhm.
um, he's a Charlotte FC fan, and he's trying to get like upper seats of that stadium. And that stadium's like a 70K like plus arena. Like the seats for that game have already like just dramatically risen. I mean, that's one effect that we're going to see too.
Unless I'm like able to work at a Messi match, I don't even think I'll be able to go to a Messi match. That's how crazy it is right now with him coming here. I mean, hopefully I can, but it's just crazy how expensive things got. The LAFC match because he's coming to LAFC later this year. The cheapest seats before he signed were $16, and those same seats are $599 now.
Jeez.
So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, for sure. I'm lucky enough, actually. I have seen him before. I went to PSG last year when I studied abroad in London, and that was my biggest draw to Paris. I'm like, this city's disgusting, but I'm gonna go see Messi play, like Messi and Mbappe play. Like that was kind of my main draw there. That and the Louvre, but
Mhm.
I'm fortunate enough that I've seen him play. So if Gillette sells out, I don't really have to worry about it that much. But judging by where my season ticket will be next year, because I'm going to renew it,
Mhm.
I think I'll, unless he doesn't go because of the turf, which I really hope that doesn't happen, but I'll hopefully get to see him again. But yeah, I'm sure it'll be definitely a competition whenever he plays somewhere.
Yeah, 100%. And it's great. There's no negatives you could make out of this. And anyone who is making negative from it, first of all, they're haters because really, like, come on, guys. And two, like, you're just grasping at straws. If you think there's any negatives towards Messi coming to MLS, if you're an American, I get it. The people in Europe are like, why is he coming to America? But if you're in America and you're an American sports fan, not even American soccer fan, but American sports fan, and Messi in MLS, I mean, it's the greatest thing that could
It's
ever
huge.
happen.
Yeah, for sure. It's the greatest thing the league has ever done. Even more so than Beckham, than Zlatan, or anyone else, and that's ever come here. I mean, they're good, but they have not had. They're not Messi. I mean, it's just simple. They're not Messi. Um, when we talked about the financials, obviously Miami's trying to find about every loophole that they can. To bring in Messi's buddies. I mean, Busquets is one that's coming in that's confirmed. He's going to be a DP. Messi's obviously going to be a DP. And then I believe their other ones are,
Alba.
there's the likes of Joseph Martinez and Leo Campana. I think is I believe he's a DP.
Yeah,
Um,
young DP. So Joseph Martinez is actually not a DP this year.
Oh, he's not. I thought he was. Okay, yeah. I'm
Rodolfo
used to him being
Pizarro
one,
is.
and they're
Yeah.
trading him to the Galaxy, so
Yeah.
that makes sense. But yeah, they're trying to find every loophole they can. Jordi Alba's another one that's been linked with Inter Miami. You know, another former Barcelona player. Um, how do you think that this is gonna like you know we mentioned obviously talking about expanding the U22 initiative or the DP slots. Do you think that this is basically going to confirm that that does happen
Yes. I will be shocked if we have the same roster rules as next year, or same roster rules as this year next year.
next
I'll
year?
be.
As this year,
Yeah.
I got you. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. I'll be very shocked. I know there's already a natural progression in the salary cap that happens every year. It's very
Yeah.
minimal, but so aside from that, I'll be shocked if we have the same rules next year.
Yeah, I would be too, to be honest. I mean, I think Messi's going to completely change how MLS looks at its financials. It's like, okay, well, if we can pull this star player, then we can definitely pull in these other star players. Obviously, there's some competition, you know, elsewhere too. But yeah, I mean, I think that's going to happen too. I think Messi will rewrite history, and you know, he rewrites history wherever he goes. You know, I don't think MLS is going to be any different. Um, but yeah, no, I fun fact actually about Leo Campana, since I did mention him, he actually is dating a girl that just graduated with me at Bryant
Hey,
University. Yeah, so I actually had a class with her. So um,
that's
the
crazy.
next time he's in the area, I'll be like, hey, can you tell him to give me his jersey?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, I'm
Yeah,
hoping I'd prefer the Galaxy to trade for him over, Rodolfo Pizarro, but I would love to have Campana.
I
We
think
would.
Pizarro fits the Galaxy's needs perfectly, though. I mean,
Yeah, if he
he's
could
an
play out wide.
attacking midfielder, and
Yeah.
also he's Mexican. He's going to draw
Yeah.
in some people there
It's true. It's
that
just
want
he's
to
been
see
pretty
him.
bad. He's just been bad the past couple years. So
Yeah,
I
he
do
hasn't quite
understand.
panned out how they wanted him to, unfortunately. But you know,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
he'll be better with he'll link up with Pooch nicely and go from there.
Hopefully. One can dream.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Yeah, so we already talked about Garber's position, so I'll move on to my next question.
Mhm.
Obviously, Messi's going to be a success. I don't think it's going to take much for him to, you know, come in and just dominate the league. I mean, he's it took him a while in France, but I think currently France is probably still at a global scale more big than MLS is. But he's come in and done well wherever he's gone. He'll be a success story, but one thing that MLS has had its fair share of, you know, obviously there have been success stories, but there's also been some failures. You know, you're a Galaxy fan. Steven Gerrard was a complete bust. I would say Frank Lampard would lean. He was a little better than Gerrard was, but I'd still lean towards more on the bust on his side. And even the
Mhm.
likes of Kaká weren't probably what people would have expected. How do you think that MLS is able to limit these types of failures to only have more of the success stories?
They need to sign the players that actually still want to prove something, who aren't here to run a lot. Players like Gonzalo Higuain.
Yeah,
We want the guys who want to come to MLS and actually make a difference rather than just enjoy living in America. And also, I mean, all the players you mentioned, and I add guys like Blaise Matuidi and Andrea Pirlo. The defensive midfielders, the deep lying playmakers, are not built for MLS, and like the legendary ones. And I'm
yeah.
worried about Sergio Busquets. I actually have very little faith that he's going to be a good signing for them. I mean, if he was part of the deal to bring in Messi, then he's a great signing. But I don't like that he's a designated player for them because we've seen it before. Deep lying playmakers are some of the greatest soccer players, but they're not for MLS. They just really are not, especially
Yeah,
because Miami is awful defensively already. And having to put more of a burden on Busquets and not allowing him to be himself out there is going to really hurt him and his game. And I look at Andrea Pirlo as my example because he was the exact same type of player to me. So that I'm very worried about Busquets, but I think Alba will be good and then Messi's going to be great. But I think, in terms of these legendary players, the bigger busts have never or have almost always been the midfielders, the center midfielders.
yeah, no, that's true. And unfortunately, you did cut out a little bit there. I think that was on my end. I think my Wi-Fi decided to have a moment there, but I think you talked about it after the fact. Like after I got back on, so I think it's good there. But Yeah, no, that makes sense. But there is one guy that Miami's been linked with that I definitely think would be a failure, and that's Eden Hazard. I mean, I'm a Real Madrid fan.
Yeah.
Eden Hazard was so bad that they started like a 19-year-old kid over him, and that 19-year-old kid ended up being Vinicius Jr., which he's been an absolute menace for that team. He's one of their best players, but if Hazard came to MLS, that would be in my opinion, maybe the worst signing the league has ever made. Because if he's not injured, he's at Burger King. If he's not at Burger King, he's on the physio table. Like, he's terrible. He would be a god awful signing. If Miami's training staff and their medical staff want a great job, they'll be the ones being like, "Hey, Eden, come over here. Let's stretch those legs out. Come on." I think he'd be an awful signing, but I definitely think that MLS. One thing that they I think need to look at is one what you said about midfielders, but also look at where the player was in their career before they come over. Um, because obviously you'll have the occasional guy that was really down and then it just lifted him up. I think Gareth Bale is a great example of that. But on the flip side, I think guys like Gerrard were clearly just done and just wanted the paycheck.
100%.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but my final question about the Messi part is, where do you see the league in 10 years after he retires?
I'd like to hope it's a top 5 league in the world. I don't think it's that unrealistic. First of all, we need to solidify ourselves as a top 10 league, but I really think that, MLS could be one of the biggest leagues in the world with everything that's about to happen in the next few years, the exposure it has. And, I think with, Major League Baseball dying in popularity, with, NHL, not quite, piquing a lot of people's interest, even though I love it personally.
I love hockey. I'm
Yeah, I love
Canadian.
hockey.
I have to love hockey. It's in my
No,
DNA.
I love hockey, but it's, a harder sport for, other people to get into. And I understand that, but, I think
Yeah.
it's easy for soccer fans to enjoy it. But, I could see MLS being a top 3 league in America as well. And, I really want it to solidify itself. They always talk about the major 4 sports leagues. I always say we have 5 major sports leagues, but, I want it to be without a question that MLS is, a major 4 or 5 sports league in America. And I think it's funny. I care more about that than being a top 5 soccer league in the world.
I actually would agree with that.
Yeah.
I think so too.
I think popularity in America matters way more to me than, how the rest of the world sees us. But I think with the tournaments the next few years, we will get to that point.
Yeah, I think the expansion of the Club World Cup is going to be a big thing. I think I mean, obviously, some teams don't really like it because the players are playing more. But I think it's great. I think it's a great chance for promotion in the U.S. I mean, you got all these big teams coming over, like Manchester City. Real Madrid's probably going to be one of them. I think that's only going to help. Soccer exposure in the U.S., but also it'll help MLS too because there are going to be MLS teams in that tournament. So yeah, I absolutely think that's a big thing, and yeah, I think it matters more to me as well because I think one of my least favorite sayings is when people say, "Oh, who cares about soccer? We're in America. Who cares?" I'm like, have you not been watching anything? Like, look at the attendance numbers. Like, they're going up. Look at Charlotte FC, like
And
Atlanta, Seattle. Those teams have sold out NFL stadiums before because that's just how big it is. Like, that's how big it's getting in the U.S. and even where I live, New England. I mean, we're almost selling out the lower bowl of Gillette. We haven't done that consistently ever. So
yeah,
yeah,
it's been a great rise for you guys, by the way. I've noticed that this year as well. There's no more, oh, it's the one Revs fan joke, like they're, Revs are really pulling their weight. But for me, it always starts with the youth. Are they playing soccer? What sports are they choosing to play? And someone from LA, I could tell you that soccer is probably the most played sport youth wise in this area. It's probably the most watched sport. Just MLS isn't the most watched league, and that's where we want to continue to improve, get people to watch LAFC, get people to watch the Galaxy, actually more people to watch the Galaxy than LAFC. They don't need to worry about them. But just as more people watching the league, because as big as the Galaxy and LAFC are, I have to admit it. Club America and Chivas are the biggest teams in LA.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
it's
The
it's
large
like
Mexican demographic.
exactly. So we need to get those fans to get invested into the El Tráfico rivalry, and that's why I was just so proud of what happened at the Rose
Oh, the
Bowl
Rose
last.
Bowl. That made me smile, and I'm all the way on the East Coast.
Being there, I teared up the whole entire time. It made everything that I've done the past 8 years feel validated. Really, like that was
Good.
to experience that was it was incredible. But yeah, it's that's how MLS can, grow in popularity and become, a top league. It's just, that those type of events, getting a whole city ready for it and stuff, and getting them to focus on the Galaxy like they focus on the Lakers, because the Lakers are unfortunately the biggest team in Los Angeles.
Yeah, certainly isn't the Dodgers.
yeah, but that's what I mean. It's just like, if we can get everyone to care about the Galaxy the way that they care about the Lakers, that's how MLS will gain that popularity and that status as a big league in America.
Absolutely. So we got one final quick section. This has gone longer than I honestly was expecting,
Oh,
but
sorry.
no, you're good. So one thing that I think the league could improve upon, and I mean, am I an angry fan because of this? Maybe a little bit, but refereeing. I mean, we have to mention it at least once in this video. Um, the Revs this past weekend were screwed by a terrible VAR call. Columbus was also very mad at the referees. Is that one thing that you think has to improve if we do want to attract a lot of other big names?
Grayson, you're not gonna like my answer here. No matter how much and how badly we wanted to improve, refereeing will never be perfect. It will never be good. In any sport, in any league across the world,
It's
refereeing
true.
will never be up to par. And that's just a fact. Because I think, as bad as it has been in MLS the past couple weeks, especially in that Revs game, holy crap. I mean, that was rough. But
Yeah, it's worse
there's
being there.
there's nothing that, I mean, the refereeing will never be good in any sport, in any league. And we could only hope to improve. For me in soccer, I just think we need more definitive rules. What is offside? What is a handball? We need I don't want clear and obvious, or I mean, I want clear and obvious, but you know what I mean? I don't want them to
Yeah, yeah.
have to like decide whether this is a technical handball or not. I like that they tried to change the rule of a handball because, it is more fair in a way, but it's too subjective. A lot of these rules, what is a yellow card? What is a red card? It needs to be stricter on what is a red card, what is a yellow card, what's a handball, what's not, because I think there's too much leniency with the refereeing decisions. And I just think you need to just, really hammer home the rules. That's how they'll improve. But like I said, they're never going to be good.
Yeah, obviously it'll never be perfect, and I don't expect it to be. But I think part of it is that there's definitely mistakes that can be cut out, and I think a rule change could be part of that, for sure. I mean, globally as a whole, the rules are still aren't all where they need to be, but I definitely think that right now, if I was comparing the two, I think the Premier League has generally done a better job at getting over VAR. They obviously had their fair share of hiccups too.
At first,
Not
they were way worse than MLS.
Oh, not it wasn't even close. But they've seemed to figure it out, and I think that they're now, in my opinion, ahead of where MLS is in refereeing. And I think that it feels like a somewhat easy cleanup for me. It's just there's a couple things that could be cut out. It's just it's a matter of definition. Now how they do that, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not a refereeing expert, but um, if we're looking at that, I definitely think that while it won't be perfect, improvements definitely could be made.
Yeah, for sure. It's weird. It sucks that it screws over teams. It screwed over the Galaxy earlier this season. There were a few calls that literally could have changed the course of the season, actually, for the Galaxy.
Us too.
But yeah, it is what it is. It'll always be trash. But we can only hope it can improve. And I think just being more definitive on what's what, that's the way to go. And you could have, maybe if something doesn't feel like it should happen, at least if it goes according to the rule book, then it's fair, but I just feel
Gotcha.
like refs are too subjective.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, definitely needs to there's got to be something done there, but we'll hopefully it gets better. Final question for you today, and that is about kind of relating back to what we talked about, aging players, that type of thing. So you talked about defensive midfielders, and I think that was a great point. Um, what approach do you think MLS should take to kind of rejecting these guys who just clearly are looking for the paycheck, especially with the rise of Saudi Arabia, who can offer players absolutely these ludicrous, insane wages?
Definitely be pickier, try to gauge better at which players are going to come here and play and which ones are going to come here and collect a check. I think that's a big thing. Know who you're signing for sure. And, I don't care if MLS lowballs certain players because they don't feel like they're good enough, And if we miss out on players because of that, that is what it is. But like an Eden Hazard, as you mentioned, I don't think he should be a top 5 highest paid player in MLS like he probably
Absolutely
would.
not. Dear God.
But if he comes to MLS, he's gonna be, I talk about Douglas Costa. I could talk about Douglas Costa all day. He's been better lately, but I'm still not I'm not fully convinced on him yet because of what he's led me on to believe over the past year and a half. But players like that, you just really got to gauge better, because I don't think that we should eliminate signing these types of players. These older stars. Stars are what make the money in MLS. But I think the teams just need to be more selective. I think selective is the right word.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, and I think Hazard could be a good start for that. I think they should reject him flat out. I mean, he's gotta find a different place to go, unless he plays like he did at Chelsea, which we haven't seen that in 4 years since he left Chelsea.
Maybe he could play that in MLS. We don't know. We don't know.
Maybe.
But
Yeah, it's all about the risk.
I think they also need to talk to the players, not just their agents. Because I think sometimes it's the agent that makes these deals go through without going through the players, really testing them. Signings can take longer time than they normally do take, make sure you are making it, because this is a decision that, could cost millions to a franchise.
Yeah, or that also just it could be one decision that leads to the player's decline as well. So it's not just obviously the club could get screwed and the player could get screwed. Douglas Costa is probably a great example of that. I honestly was expecting more from him. I thought he was going to be a good one, but stuff happens.
I was never too high on him, but he yeah. I don't know. I'm working on an apology thing for him, but I think he's got to do a little more before I release it. But
fair enough. I mean, hey, I think the biggest one this season was Alan Pulido. I mean, you were like, he hasn't been great. He's been a little overhyped. Alan Pulido starts just going on this absolute tear. After you made that video.
That's what I do. And I've done it with the Chicago Fire now. I said they're the most depressing club ever, and now they've won all but one match since. So, it's what I do. It's the Eli jinx. Everyone knows it. And it's why I don't make predictions. And then when I do, they're the worst things ever. I predicted LAFC and Toronto FC to be the MLS Cup this year. So,
yeah, Toronto's had a rough go.
Yeah, well, I actually intentionally picked LAFC to win it all because that means they won't. But yeah, that's how I work. It's the Eli jinx, people know about it. And yeah, I will never, whenever anyone asks me to make predictions for them for like their betting stuff or anything, I'm like, just don't do. I can't. I don't want you to lose money.
No. Yeah, you're go to someone else for that.
Exactly. I'm not here to predict, and MLS in general is just the least predictable thing ever. So
it really is. It really is, and that's one thing I think that a lot of people, I think that's a big draw to it, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But anyways, that will do it from us this week. Thank you very much, Eli, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure. If you're not already subscribed, go subscribe to both This Week in MLS and FutbalBiz podcast on YouTube. It means a lot to both of us. Go follow This Week in MLS and FutbalBiz on Instagram if you aren't already. And yeah, once again, thank you very much to Eli for coming on, and we'll see how Messi impacts the league in the future.
Awesome.
All right. As always, I'm Grayson Mortimer, and we will see you next time.